Hi, I'm Otway Ross. Welcome to another guitar lesson. In this lesson, I'll teach you about the guitar pick, how to hold it, what it's used for, and what sort you should probably get. The guitar pick is something which is used to strum the strings or pick strings individually, and it's used to make it easier and also change the sound. So if you're playing the guitar in a finger style method, like this, and we change to a guitar pick, notice how the sound is much brighter. In a similar way, if you're strumming, again, it's much brighter. The other thing is with strumming, if you really want to lay into the guitar and get a lot of volume and maximize the attack, it's going to be a lot easier with a pick. So, what is a guitar pick? Fairly simple question and a reasonably simple answer. Here's a selection of guitar picks that I've used over the years. As you can see, the majority of them are the same size. So the size doesn't vary too much. You do get smaller ones and larger ones, but the size is fairly standard. What does vary with guitar picks is the material and the thickness. So the material is typically nylon or some other equivalent, some kind of plastic. On the thicker plectrums, it's generally a harder plastic. On the thinner plectrums or picks, you have more flexibility and they want something that is a little bit more robust and flexible. There we go. So the material is quite often plastic. You can get brass or aluminium, you can even get glass or felt, things like this. So go for your life, experiment with different materials. There's not much to lose, they're quite cheap, and you're only hitting the strings and you replace your strings very often, so again there's no damage either way. So try out all the different sorts of materials. And the difference between the thicknesses of the plectrums varies from somewhere around 0.38 millimeters. They're all measured in millimeters, which is great for me coming from Australia. So 0.38 millimeters all the way up to 3 millimeters. Now, the reason that you might select something that's thin versus something that's thick is the way it changes the tone of the guitar. So something that's thin is going to skip across the strings because it's going to be quite flexible. So if you think of your arm putting a certain amount of energy in, instead of sticking at each string and putting a lot of that energy into the strings, it tends to bend over the strings and brushes them lightly. And that gives quite a light, bright tone. So with the thin guitar plectrums, think of them as almost like slapping across the strings. Conversely, something like a 3 millimeter, this is a Jim Dunlop stubby, big stubby. So a 3 millimeter plectrum, or anything over like a millimeter, is going to be not quite as bright, and it's going to put a lot of energy into the strings. So when you put a lot of energy into the strings, you're going to get the full spectrum of sounds from the bass all the way up to the upper end. So let's just hear that quickly. So if I play each one, this is the 0.38 Jim Dunlop nylon. Play the big stubby, the 3 millimeter. So you can still hear the sound of the pick, but this one, the 0.38, the really thin one, has a lot of slap to it. And you can hear the guitar sounds a little lighter, a little less full, a bit more thin. I can actually feel that the guitar isn't vibrating as much as when I play it with this one. In terms of actual ease of playing, I would say the thinner ones, for a beginner at least, are a little bit easier to play because the thicker ones can tend to get sort of stuck on the strings. It's not going to bend over the strings. So if you make a mistake on the angle that you pick at, you're going to discover that mistake more easily with a thicker plectrum. With a thinner one, it's just going to float over the strings and be a little easier. Okay, so the next question would be how to hold the pick. So once you've got your pick, the way to hold it is to imagine you're pulling a trigger, pull the trigger, and you've got a bent sort of D-shaped or U-shaped bit for your index finger. Put the rounded end, you've got a rounded end and a pointy end. So put the rounded end on the first segment of your finger, like this, then just put your thumb over the top. So now you've got that's a fairly standard way of holding the pick. Think of it the way that US presidents, say congratulations. They put their thumb over the top of their index finger. Same way. So pull the trigger, put the pick there, and then put your thumb over the top. Now when you play, if you imagine that the guitar is here, like this, let's get this in there. When you play, you will be playing with your thumb parallel with the guitar strings. Like that. So there's not a huge amount of movement in this fairly traditional grip. There's not a huge amount of movement in your fingers. So you can angle your wrist a fair amount, like probably 90 degrees, and that will change the movement of the pick and how easy it is to strum across the strings and how much energy goes into the strings, but you're not moving much in terms of the movement of your fingers. The second way to play is just the standard sort of pinch grip, which is just to grab the pick between your fingers and play like this. Now that gives you a sort of a hinge movement around the first joint of your finger and your index finger and your thumb, and that can be useful if you're trying to move in and out of the strings to do fast runs. That kind of style. I actually play somewhere between the two, so I don't hold it like I'm pinching something. I sort of hold it on the side, but I do move my fingers a little bit. So that's the pinch, and that's fairly suitable. This big stubby plectrum has a hollowed out section on either side, which is good for gripping in the pinch grip. I actually do something between the pinch and the traditional, and I move it a little bit, but I'm fairly comfortable with the traditional. So I hold the traditional, but quite loose. The other thing that I do, and just experiment, like with the lesson I taught you on how to hold the guitar, experiment with everything and see what suits and what feels comfortable. I actually flip the pick around and play with the back end of the pick. The reason I do that is on fast runs, if you have a lot of pick sticking out, every time you go over the string you have to pull it out a lot and push it back in. So this kind of woodpecker action is a lot more exaggerated. I'll just show you what that looks like. So if I'm playing I'm going in and out of the strings a lot because with the pointy end. With the rounded end, it just reduces that movement, and so I find that a little faster to play. But like I say, experiment between the two of them. There's a lot of examples on Wikipedia. If you go to Wikipedia and then look up guitar pick, then go down the bottom, there's a column or a section called technique, and it gives lots of examples. People that play like Eddie Van Halen plays between his thumb and his middle finger so that he can tap with his index finger. Other people play, I think, with the plectrum between index and middle, so they've got their thumb free. Other people use two picks on one hand. Brilliant. Go for your life. It's all good. Just as a little anecdote, I'll just show you this pick. So this red pick is one of my old favorites. We all get old favorite picks. I've had that for years, and you can see that the top of the pick, the rounded end, has two angles on it, and that's where I've worn it down. So it's kind of nice if you find a good pick that's a favorite. This yellow one is one of my favorites. I've had this for probably almost 10 years, which is kind of embarrassing. But if you find a favorite pick, it's funny. It ends up feeling really good. That's pretty much it for picking. The last thing is, if you were to go out and buy a pick, what would I recommend that you get? Well, the .46 and the .60 I find are probably the easiest to play and have the nicest balance of brightness and the bass tones of the heavier pick. Probably the .60 is the middle of the road, and I use that a lot. At the moment, I tend to play the 0.46 a little more. It just has I like the way that the guitar pick can just flex in your fingers. This is a 0.38, but the 0.46 is pretty close to that. So Jim Dunlop nylon 0.46 or 0.60. I don't work for Jim Dunlop, I just happen to like their picks. And go out and experiment. They're pretty cheap. If you pay anything more than $2 for a pick, you're getting ripped off. If you buy them in bulk, you can get them from anywhere from 25 cents per pick, all the way up to, like I say, just over $1 or $1.50 a pick if you buy 3 or 4 or buy one at a time. In a guitar shop, they should have them for around 50 cents. So if you get stuck in a little tiny country guitar shop and they're trying to charge you $2, then you might have to wear that, but you're probably getting ripped off. So go for your life, find a guitar pick, practice with the different positions, and happy playing. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.